The music was elegant, the chandeliers shimmered. Everyone looked perfect until she opened her mouth. Me daughter-in-law, dressed in white, lace and pride, looked at me, smirked, and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Wow, I didn't know pigs were allowed it." Wedding slaughter filled the hall. Her friends giggled. Her father raised his glass and added, "Well, at least she's well fed. That's impressive." And in that moment, I didn't just feel humiliated, I felt erased. But what they didn't know was the fat pig they were mocking was the silent investor who had already bought her father's entire companies. Karma doesn't arrive wearing vengeance, it shows up wearing diamonds. And a quiet smile comment if you've ever been insulted by someone who didn't know your story. Tap like if you believe revenge tastes best when served in silence. Subscribe for more stories where humiliation turns into inheritance. I remember every detail of that day, the roses on the tables, the sparkle in her eyes, the pity in everyone else's as I walked toward the buffet table to place my small handmade gift. She turned, scanning me from head to toe. "Dad," she said, "look who finally showed up." Guess the buffet got its biggest family laugh. I smiled, not because it was funny, but because ID learned that dignity doesn't shout back. He stood there quietly holding the gift. ID wrapped myself a delicate silver bracelet that once belonged to my late husband. It was meant as a blessing, but she didn't deserve it. Any Marie giggle around me echoed like knives. Every whisper felt like ash, and Yeti stood still. But gals, when you know the truth, you don't need to win the moment, you wait to win the story. They laughed at me in public, but the same crowd would soon watch me sign their future in silence. A year earlier, I'd been running my small organic farm on the city's edge, the same land they used to. Not calling it mud money, but my crops fed hundreds of families, and one of those families belonged to a man named Richard Hawley, a quiet investor with a reputation for saving broken companions. On evening, he visited my farm, impressed by how I turned barren soil into gold. He told me, "Mrs. Sandra, I see something in you that most people overlook." Endurance. When he learned that my daughter-in-law's father owned a struggling construction firm, drowning in debt, he smiled knowingly and said, "I might buy it, but only if you're in." He laughed, thinking it was a joke, but weeks later, I signed the papers. I invested everything I had, and Richard did the rest. Together, we acquired her father's entire company, saving him from bankruptcy without him knowing who stood behind it. And that's when I learned something powerful. Sometimes fate lets people mock you so their laughter can echo in their own downfall. She called me a fat pig, but soon her father would call me boss. The wedding carried on like a parade of vanity. She flaunted her diamond ring. Her father made toasts about family legacy, and I sat quietly in the corner, invisible, just how they preferred me to bub you. Then the sound of a sleek black car echoed outside. Engines stopped. Eyes turned, whispers began. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped out. "Richard, my business partner." Her father's proud smile cracked. He rushed forward, hand extended. "Mr. Halley, what a surprise you came for the wedding." Richard's expression was calm, unreadable. He replied softly, "No, I came to meet my new partner." I walked right past him, straight toward me. The room fell silent. You could hear the clink of a dropped glass. "Sandra," he said, warmly, shaking my hand. "The final ownership documents have been processed. Congratulations, you now hold 40% of the firm." Color drained from her father's face. Her daughter's smile vanished, and I just smiled the way the moon smiles when it hides behind clouds. Calm, distant, untouchable. The same people who mocked me for walking in were now too afraid to stand up when I passed. The silence in that hall was worth more than gold. No apology came, only shock, shame, and sudden humility. Turned to her father and said quietly, "You called me a pig, but pigs don't borrow, they build, and sometimes they buy the whole farm." Looked down, speechless. My daughter-in-law's eyes filled with tears, not from guilt, but from the fear of realizing She had married into the hands of the woman she humiliated. Didn't gloat. I didn't stay. I simply placed the gift box, the bracelet on the table and walked out because power doesn't scream. It walks away while everyone else is still catching their breath. They called me fat, but now I was the one feeding their future. Weeks later, I sat on my porch, the same place where I once cried over their cruelty. Now I was sipping tea from a cup engraved with my name, Sandra Hawley, co-owner. Wind carried laughter from the fields. I own the same fields that once mocked my sweat now. Whispered successy thought of that night, the laughter, the shame, the silence, and I smiled because forgiveness isn't weakness, it's choosing not to fight the noise when you already own the microphone. She called me a fat pig, but pigs are smart. They survive storms, and they never forget who fed them. Insults comment below if you've ever been underestimated by someone who thought they'd never need you. Tap like if you believe silence is the loudest justice. Subscribe for more stories where pain turns to power and laughter turns to lessons.